Right, it's coming up now. Now it's recording. Brilliant. Oh, fantastic. Right. Good morning, everybody. Myself and Alan here are going to have quite a nice raw conversation, I think, and I do believe that having these conversations are really great within our membership. So Alan has kindly agreed to come on because he has quite, well, I think, a quite unique story to tell, and I think that it will really help you guys as teachers to be able to use this information that we're going to talk about in different ways of a child's perspective, but then also as an adult perspective as well with regards to teaching and then how that response of teaching comes about. So I'm going to hand over to Alan to let him explain to you who he is, and also shall we start from the beginning, but tell us what you're doing now, and then that will then, won't it, lead into what happened, what sort of led you to this point. Is that all right, Alan? Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy to share my story with everybody. Just to give you a little bit of context, I'm almost 40 years old now, and I've spent most of my life not being able to swim. That was mostly a result of a fear induced by my mom, fear of water induced by my mom. And despite the fact of having a father who is really good at swimming, I wasn't able to do it until the age of 32. Okay. Where I just decided to make a huge change and learn. I'm usually a proponent of learning by myself, and also that includes some bad negative experience with a swimming teacher. I think I had 2 classes and I just said, no, I'm not going to do it. I think you would be very happy to hear the mistakes that usually, in my opinion, swimming teachers or instructors make, because that probably would help them in their business. Yeah. And I spent a few years learning by myself, doing research, watching YouTube tutorials, learning by myself. And I've gotten quite good at it. I got not only good in terms of like the technique itself, but it became almost like my first environment where I felt really, really comfortable and happy. And recently I've been changing my career path. So I thought, what could I do? Because I was unsure what could I do for the world that would also be good for me and other people. And I could also think that I can make money with. So yeah. I was like, what I'm good at? I'm good at swimming. Maybe I could teach others, since I taught myself I could teach others. Yeah. So I went through a course both for NPLQ to become a lifeguard. That personally, for me, I wanted to prove to myself that I am worthy of being able to teach others. Yeah. And then that I'm good enough and strong enough of a swimmer. Yeah. And then I went to a STA course, the STA award for swimming teaching. Yep. That was last year. And I also can talk about that if need to be, how it went from coming from someone who's from a non-swimming background and went to do that. But I'm now in a process of creating my own swimming teaching career. Yep. And I also share all that on YouTube, where I talk about having my first clients and my first experience teaching mainly adults. But in the future, down the road, I'm thinking I will be helping children too. But I think my purpose is mainly taking care of adults, since, as I said, I think they find me more relatable right now in my story. So that's me.
Okay.
And I'm very happy to share my journey, because I think it's unique, it's different. I don't think you get many people who were afraid of water and then turned into a teacher, and also like a lifeguard, becoming very, very passionate about water safety. Drowning prevention is actually, the levels get higher and higher. I get more and more into it the more I'm in it. Absolutely. So I'm very happy to share everything I learned, and open to any questions anybody has. So if anybody who is listening to this conversation, then would like to follow up on something I said, they can just literally reach out to me anytime. I'm open to anybody.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. I think as well, it's really important to understand the mindset of somebody that's had that as a child. Would you say then as a child it was due to your mum that she didn't feel comfortable taking you to the swimming baths, or was it that you did have swimming lessons and that you didn't get on with them, or what
Let
was
me
it
give
that
you an idea when it all started, because it actually started as I was little baby. I probably wasn't able to understand anything that anybody says yet, and I was already fearful. So I remember this very distinctly because my mom and my dad used to tell me this story
right,
that it was funny for them, and they found it silly,
right,
but um, we couldn't understand what was going on there. And to this day, I don't understand. So
right,
when I was very little, I don't know, it was maybe one, maybe two. I'm not sure. I still have
wow,
some photos of this, but I don't remember anything. But what they say happened was that my parents were walking along the beach, and you could hear the waves
mm-hmm.
crashing and everything. And my mom would hold me on her arms,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And she would go into the water up to her knees, like literally just up to their knees.
Mm.
And I would start screaming bloody murder, be like, ah, ah, I want to go to my dad. So I guess I was speaking already because I want to say, Daddy, Daddy, I want to go to my daddy, Daddy,
Right,
Daddy. So
yeah,
so then my dad would run over.
yeah,
He would grab me on his arms,
right,
and he would stand in the water, like literally just up to his knees, and I
so
would
the
scream,
same.
"Mommy, mommy! I want to go to my
You'd be
mommy."
going back and forth.
Yes. So, I think during that period, I had some sort of already like a
Mm,
fear of the water or of
right,
the
the
sound of
sound,
the waves. I don't know what is connected.
right,
And I'm actually exploring this topic. I'm going to talk to some psychologists
yeah,
and maybe other people who are within the industry to find out whether a child can be already born with fear of water, because we hear about children being able to swim as
yeah,
early as you know, as
very young, yeah,
they're straight, they just pop out and they
yeah,
start
and
swimming
then, yeah,
immediately. And you know, maybe that's a majority, but there are children that will be
yeah,
scared, fearful, and I
right, on
think
the
I was
get-go.
one of those. Okay,
Mhm.
so we weren't able to explain this, and we really didn't explore that, you know, any further. It was just a funny
Right,
story, and I was just kind of given that I was scared of water.
right. Did
I don't
they,
know.
sorry to interject you, but did
Yeah,
they even try and put your feet in the water? You know, because sometimes we almost like dangle them over, you know, you dangle them into the water for your feet to touch, or,
I would have to ask.
right,
Although I would now, from my experience with my parents and how they were, I would say that probably they didn't, because I remember being very persuasive as a child. So,
right,
I'm going to continue this.
yeah,
So later on, when I was a little older, when we went to the swimming pool, I would also be very uncomfortable in swimming pools.
right,
Just like even if we went for fun, whether that was the tubes that
mhm,
you
the
do
slides,
the slides, or somebody would take you, like, you know, your dad or your mom would take you to the water, I would still be very fearful, and I think I was crying, I think I was screaming,
right,
and I believe my parents were giving in to that. So
right,
they would not
push you
be
further,
pushy. They would be
yeah,
like, okay, he doesn't do it, fine, fair enough, and
okay,
they
took you
just
away from
basically
that,
took it away. So, you know, there's the opposite of that, where people try to force the
yep,
kid, and that's a different conversation that
yeah,
we
yeah,
might
yeah,
have later. But yeah, my parents were like, okay, I guess he's not going to learn, he's
yeah,
not going to do it,
right,
and that's it. So just to give you an idea, my father had we have in Poland such something called swimmer's card. It's like a driving license for swimming.
All right.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
you have to kind of like pass an exam, and it tells
Mhm.
you that you're a good swimmer. My father had that.
Okay.
It's I don't think it's like equivalent of like being a lifeguard, but I think if you have that
High
license,
stages.
yeah,
Yeah.
that you get this kind of license thing. So my dad was a great swimmer.
Mm.
My mom, on the other hand, is not scared of water, but she cannot really swim. She can swim in the shallow water, just doing her little breaststroke with the
Yeah.
hair up, like a
Yeah.
old person.
Yeah.
But she tells me that she cannot swim. Like if she was to go to a deep water, she wouldn't be able
She wouldn't
to
be
get through.
comfortable
And that she's on my list of people that I'm going to
to work
teach.
with.
It's going to take some convincing, but yeah, I want to do that. So to give you an idea, this is the parenting setup, I would say,
Yeah. Sure.
and somehow my dad wanted me to learn, but again, it wasn't a pushy thing. So when I was really persuasive and I was like, no, 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 no,
Mm.
no, 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 they just gave up, you know?
Right.
And they didn't even take me to any classes, not at all.
Great.
I have not been taken to any sort of classes partly probably because we were quite poor. We didn't have
Right.
much, and I believe
For
um, they wouldn't be able to afford it.
right.
So that's kind of like win-win. And then as I was growing up, um, when we went to holiday, like on holidays, and we would be in the sea or somewhere there would be a swimming pool, I would go to the water. So I
Right.
wasn't completely terrified. It was not a phobia,
Right.
but and I would like to do something.
Yeah.
As I was growing up, I would like to make the change. But I was still
Something
afraid.
stopping you.
Yeah, I was still afraid, and I was obviously not having enough skills to be able to do that. And during that period, as I was growing up, I developed obviously a shame of myself that I'm unable to play with my friends, for example, when they went
The
to the
bath.
water. I was standing at the shore, and I was really, really embarrassed. There's another story which we might touch on when we were at school, early primary school. The whole class would go to the pool.
Right.
Everybody would go swimming, and I had to stay in the shallow water by myself,
Mm.
whilst everybody from the class would have
Yeah.
fun.
Right.
So that created a lot of negative association with water, specifically pool water. We
Yeah.
can talk about, for example, the fact that I had a negative association, a physical negative association with chlorine smell.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so we can touch on that. I've
Yeah.
actually rewired my brain to now feel positive emotions when I
You
smell
smell.
chlorine.
Wow.
But before, the smell of chlorine was a trauma. It was like you smell chlorine, and its trauma immediately brings back bad negative emotions, shame, feeling of inferiority, and all flashes of
Right.
images from my childhood.
Oh my
Okay,
goodness. Wow. That's
so
interesting.
I'm exploring this. So again,
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking to psychologists about this,
Yeah.
but I was able to rewire my brain.
Wow.
Uh, but that was probably one of the hardest things, was the chlorine association with
With
negative
negative
emotion.
experience and emotions, like you
And
said.
and and there's one more I remember now that we can touch on is we have some family in Germany, and my dad took me to a swimming pool with those pipes and fun
Yeah.
activities. But in Germany, they have this thing where in order to go to the water, you have to take a shower first
Yeah.
before you go to the water, but you have to take the shower naked, 100% bare bones naked. Okay. And
What?
yeah, in front of other naked, fully naked men. There was not like
Really?
men and women, but it
The
was like,
open showers.
yes.
There was no
And
cubicles.
so I remember this was like, I was little, again, I don't remember exactly, but it was maybe
Right.
like 4 or 5 years old, and I
Right.
was walking around these naked men,
Yeah.
and I felt that was uncomfortable for me. I
Yeah.
remember being uncomfortable. I was just like, now I'm a man. Now I'm like, okay, get whatever. But when I was a child, walking
Yeah.
around
Too
naked
much.
men was too much, including my
Yeah.
father, by the way,
Yeah.
right? Because I've never seen my father being naked.
No.
And I know to this day, some countries require you
Mhm.
to get bare bones naked
Naked.
in order to take your
Go into
shower
the pool.
before you go to the swimming pool.
Were there other children there, or was it just
I
all
don't
men?
remember. I
Right.
don't
Okay.
remember.
Right.
But
Even as a
this.
child,
I,
that's what you remember is just big
yes.
men.
Yes, exactly. And I think because I can imagine that in different countries they have different cultures
Yeah.
of what to do in swimming pools.
Yeah.
And I guess the reasoning is that you need to wash all the bacteria before you
Yeah.
enter the
Creams and
water.
what have you. Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe should be changed.
Mm.
There's a good to have a discussion about this
Yeah.
in the community of swimming teaching
Yeah.
and swimming pool operators in general, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
I'd never heard of that before. My
yeah,
goodness.
yeah. So there's quite a few
Again, that
different.
too would add to it all as well. At that young age, it's imprinted, isn't it?
Yes. So um, I I guess, as I said, probably you'd never heard of this because this is some people can find this very embarrassing to admit.
Mm.
So I'm past that because I've been through my journey and I learned
Yeah.
that actually sharing those things and
Yes.
telling the truth actually helps other people
Absolutely.
to put
And
past their trauma and
yeah.
shame.
And you
So
talking about it helps, I guess, to
yes.
process that
Yes,
too.
yes, yes. So again, we can pull at any of those strings I just
Yeah.
shared,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there will be some other ones coming back as we go.
As
Okay.
you talk. Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. That and as a swimming teacher, you have so many different children walking through the door, is that you don't know even exactly just what you're saying about the smell. It could set off something that may have happened previously that they're trying to overcome, but they don't understand what that feeling is either. And to because what's happening is that if the more information that we have as teachers, the more that we can see signs from the beginning, but then be empathetic. The fact that if they are coming to poolside and they're not 100% running through the door, not literally, but wanting to embrace that time in the water, that they're not being awkward, or they're not being rude, or they're not being naughty. There could be these underlying thought processes as a child that we as adults, if we don't know also from an adult perspective what that child's experiencing, then how are we supposed to help them get through that?
Yes.
And I think that's why I love talking to you about this, is because you've been there, you've done that, and then you're also wanting to help other adults understand too later on why those feelings were those feelings and why you're working with them now.
Yeah.
Because it does that traumatic experience from a young child does filter through as they're an adult. And if that's the case, then how are they being with their children?
Yes.
And we know that swimming's the number one sport that every child has to
Yep.
learn for safety issues. But then we also know that the accessibility, like you're saying about the affordability as well, of being able to go to regular classes might not necessarily the case. So then as parents, if they're wanting to take them to family sessions or what have you, to still be having that exposure of water, how else as teachers can we educate broadly to be able to help? And then it's interesting you saying about the school experience too. So in Poland, it was that you did certain amount of time in school to do
Yes.
school swimming too,
I
right?
I don't remember. I think it was once a week, but maybe it was even more.
Right.
I think it was once a week. I'm just gonna add to that part.
Yeah.
So again, I think what number one, I mean, if you think about that, the whole experience of going to the swimming pool for a fearful child like me or
Yeah.
unskilled in swimming wasn't just a part of being in the water, but everything that happens around it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I remember, because I have quite a photographic memory, I
Sure.
have like these flashes of what was going on in my head
Right.
when I would arrive at the swimming pool.
Yeah.
when you go into the swimming pool as a child, probably if you're an adult, you have this too, but as a child, I can still remember that.
Yeah.
You have these specific moments that happened that I will remember forever.
Yeah.
And there are smells, there are sounds, there
Yeah.
are things that are associated with it.
Yes.
And it's not just going to the water itself.
Yes.
So one, for example, for me, is the sound of a hair dryer. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So
Yeah.
at the moment, I don't have like a negative association with a hair dryer, but I can
Right.
imagine there will be
It
people
could
who will
be.
have a negative association
Yeah.
with a hair dryer, and also the fact that you know every time you finish your swimming pool, they had to dry their
Yeah.
hair, and their hair was
Yeah.
kind of bad and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
could be something that many girls or
Yeah.
even guys look. When I was a young boy, I had actually long hair.
Right.
So one of the things I found really, really painful to do, and I hate it with every part of my soul, was to put on that rubber cup on my long
Yeah.
hair. Okay.
Yes.
And I can
Oh,
imagine how bad it is for girls,
yes.
but
I'm
there are the
pulling
other
and
there
yeah.
there are the other the cups that are made from a different material.
Silicone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but there was another, I think
Oh,
another.
latex. Latex.
No, that
Oh.
those are the uncomfortable ones. But there's something that you can get like a more of a like a polyester. I think
Oh, the fabric.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
fabric
Yeah, the
ones.
fabric ones. Yes.
And I was asking my mom to buy me one of these because I
Right.
just hated that rubber one, and
Yeah.
it's
It's
pulling your
full.
hair, and
Yeah.
it's really uncomfortable, and constantly pops out. I remember this being very uncomfortable and being one of the main reasons why I hated the experience.
Yeah.
Another one, and the fact was that in Poland they are strict, and you cannot
Have
enter
to
the
wear a
swimming
cap.
pool without it.
Yeah. The
Okay.
same in Spain, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah. Then you had the whole idea of the group of the pupils from the school gathering together in this one spot, and you
Yeah.
do smell the chlorine,
Yeah.
and you remember that in a few minutes you're gonna have to be there, and you're gonna be embarrassed, and you're gonna have to explain yourself. And there's another thing I'm gonna touch on later is the swimming teacher that we had was also our PE teacher that
Right.
I looked up to
Yeah.
quite as a young boy. I
Yeah.
wanted to be in
Inspired you.
sports. I wanted to be in sports, and I saw him as this.
Mhm.
But
Mentor.
actually, you will not believe that, and we will touch on this for sure,
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah.
He had moments where he looked down upon me because of the fact that I cannot swim.
Swimming.
Almost, yes, I'm almost to the point of like. Um, mm,
Being disrespectful.
Yes, he made some disrespectful comments that
Right.
lasted 40 years. Okay, I'm gonna be 40 next year,
Bless
and I
you.
can still remember things he said in during that time. And
Time.
I don't know how often this happens that people can remember something somebody said for
Mhm.
40 years, but
Right.
for me, um, it's important.
Yeah.
And I will remember this when I teach somebody else. You gotta look out what you say
Mhm.
because this can stay with that kid
Words.
forever.
Word stick.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I will tell you what he said
Mm.
later.
Okay.
But yes, it's absolutely that, and all that together, it
Mm.
created this very, very negative experience that didn't help me to ever try to push through it and then learn to swim. You know?
Right, right, yeah, yeah. Well, if you're feeling that uncomfortableness, either you have to do it yourself if you're not getting it from the external. So if there's no one there to say, "Come on, Alan, you can do it," or
There was no
it's that
such
sort of
thing.
gentle approach, then you're going to retract even more in yourself. And then again, if that's already the mindset that you're in, how do you even detach yourself from it? Because then it's just like, well, I'm just going to give up in that
Yeah,
sense, isn't it?
and then your parents sometimes they push those throwaway comments like, "Oh, he just
Oh,
sings like a rock." But
yeah.
my mom is like, "I also sing like a rock, so okay, it's
Mhm.
okay," you
So
know?
it's all okay then. It's almost
Yes.
like, well, if that's the case, then oh well, type of thing, rather than helping you through that of
Mm-hmm.
actually you shouldn't. That's not the case, and we can
Mm-hmm.
work with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you remember how the other swimmers were, you know, in your class? Were they sort of saying, ha ha, look at Alan, or
I think so. I don't remember exactly, but
right,
I remember that I was basically like a sore thumb, basically
right,
like the only one that couldn't really swim in the class. So you
right.
know, like everybody's doing lengths, I
Yeah.
had to go widths
Which ways?
because I was in a shallow end, and
Yeah.
I had to use the board, kickboard all the time because I was just like
Your
I
favorite thing.
yeah, basically, I was like, this is my lifesaver, you know,
Yeah.
the pigboard, and that's it. And uh, and I remember also one thing that I wanted to mention for a while is that earlier, before that, when I was younger, there was always an option to have the arm floats.
Yeah.
And as a young boy, I was embarrassed to wear these. Okay,
Right. Yeah.
so this was something. If you're a boy and you wear these floats, then you're just embarrassed
Yeah. Yeah.
even
Yeah.
even more. Not just
Right.
the fact that you cannot swim, but also as a man. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so I think it's like this fragile masculinity was
Yeah. Of course.
developing early. You
Early.
know,
Yeah.
and I think it was attached to my sense of like I think when I was growing up, I attached the thing that you want to be a man, you need to learn to swim. You cannot swim, therefore you're not man enough. And
Right.
I think that developed all the way to my 30 something
Yeah.
birthday until I decided to take care of this and become the man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this was kind of like how it went.
And how were you in other sports?
I was really good in other sports.
Mhm.
Okay, so I was playing football. I was doing long distance running. I was doing sprints, and actually, I was getting a lot of respect from even the PE teacher for that.
Right.
But there's other things that he said along the way when, again, like a throwaway comment that it
Yeah.
would kept coming back. But again, like in other sports, I was doing very well.
Right.
I played basketball. I tried many different things, and I loved it. And I wanted to be a
Mhm.
sporty guy.
Yeah.
Um, and as a matter of fact, I wanted to go to the physical education
Right.
university. And I went through all the tests and everything did very well, but I failed swimming test.
Mm.
And that's a story on its own as well. I have it on my YouTube channel, so people
Okay.
can go and listen to this story
Yeah.
about how I failed the university test. Um, we can talk about that
Yeah.
too,
No,
but
that's
I don't
interesting
think
that they're
that
asking
that
you
is
to
the
do
most
that.
important one.
Mm.
Okay.
So, because a lot of families also then think that because their child is already sporty, that they should be totally fine with regards to swimming. I mean,
Mhm.
they're confident and they're showing that they're strong, or things like that on land, but then potentially when you add in water they may be a completely different person.
Yes.
So when I try and explain to teachers as well, is that although they might be a confident person on land, when it comes to adding water or what have you, they may not be that confident person anymore, and that expectations,
Yeah.
we need to try and not have those, and see each child as almost like a blank canvas,
Yes.
so that we're not. And what I love that you do as well is that you talk to your adults first before you even get
Yes.
in the water, don't you?
Yes.
And you actually spend quite a lot of time with them, don't you? Not saying that everybody needs to do that, but the reasoning why, I love to hear why you do that.
The reason why I talk to people, because I want to understand what's driving them. For example, my newest client, he wasn't afraid of water. He just didn't have the chance to learn.
Right.
That's it. But he was willing and he wanted. It was just no opportunity, and he didn't figure this out. And he haven't for 42 years. He
Yeah.
haven't done any of that. So
Right.
he wasn't afraid. So I knew what I can then ask him to do in the water, because I
Yeah.
knew that, okay, so we can try to go maybe at a faster pace, but maybe there's something else that he's struggling with, which there
Yeah.
was. And so I wanted to know that. I also think they appreciate the fact that you ask about their story, because everybody's story is different, and some people went through some very traumatic experience.
Yeah.
I'm also trying to find like a common thread, a common what you call denominator,
Yeah.
where we can understand each other. They'll trust me more, because if they asked me about something and I had the same experience,
Yeah.
we can then talk it through, and I can look them straight in the eye and say, I know where you are, I understand it. We will get through this
Together. Yeah.
and it really helps.
Yeah.
And I remember I was partially when I was in the swimming teaching course, the
Yes.
STA course, I had experience, hands-on experience teaching kids, and there were some really fearful ones.
Right.
And I had an ongoing conversation with the kid in the water, and because I think the kid also appreciated. I think they kind of know. They
Yeah.
know. They like you have this
Feed.
understanding that you you they can trust you, but you can also ask them, how do you feel about
Yeah.
this? Is it good? Is it bad? How I constantly asked, for example, I was just like, what do you think? Open-ended question. Like, what do you think? How do you find this? And like opening them up
Yeah.
rather than asking them like, is this good,
Sure.
is this bad, like
Yeah.
yes or no
Yeah.
questions. I would
Close.
be like,
Yeah.
what do you think? And the kids were telling me, they were
Oh,
like,
that's
oh,
good.
I don't do this, I don't. And for example, some of them were very much overthinkers, and I'm
Right.
an overthinker too. So just like, okay, you're absolutely right. It says, yeah, you step outside of the platform, you're not going to reach the bottom. That is
Right.
very, you're smart. It's
Yeah.
just like, you are
Absolutely.
smart.
Yeah.
Well
Thank
done
you.
for
Yeah.
noticing that.
Yeah.
You're a smart person. And it's like the conversations are important. I
Yeah.
think they are, because you can miss something if you don't ask them those questions. You can miss something that's crucial.
Yeah.
For example, when I went to that and I had a negative experience when I went to a
Right.
swimming
Yes.
class, I had something in my mind that I knew that I want to work on and that I wanted to try or get good at, particularly breathing. Okay, I
Right.
wanted to figure out the breathing in
Yeah.
front crawl, but also others. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
yet the teacher didn't ask me about this once.
Mm.
She immediately proceeding to giving me drills with
Yeah.
a kickboard and focused on my kick. Okay, I'm like, I don't need, like, she was telling me that one of my legs is kind of
Right.
off to the side. Like I wasn't, like when I was doing my breast stroke kick, it was kind of going
Right.
to the side and it was uneven.
Right. Right.
And that's what she was focusing on. And I'm like, I need to do
No.
something, like this doesn't take me any closer to my goal,
Yeah.
but she didn't ask me about the goal. She just had an idea of what she's going to do.
Yeah.
She should send me over. And if you are a student, you're not going to be questioning your teacher's methods.
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're going to do
True.
what you're being told,
Self.
and you think, question yourself, maybe I'm stupid and I don't understand
Right.
why this is important.
Right.
But some teachers might be giving the wrong instructions because they
Yeah.
don't even bother to ask.
Ask. Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and again, that's so interesting. Is that the lady? It was her own perception of how she wanted the lesson to go.
Yes,
So it was her, not what you're wanting to gain from it.
yes,
So
yes,
she didn't even think. So imagine what it's like for a child of
yeah,
not, and even if they're not understanding what they're asking to do, and if that understanding's not there or the purpose, why am I doing this? And
exactly.
you think, well,
I
where
think
do I go with that?
that's a very good point you're making about the why. So I've noticed as a teacher, sometimes people tell teachers tell the student what to do,
Yeah.
but they don't tell the student why to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yep.
if you're telling me that I'm supposed to turn my head and keep one go to the side
Yep.
underwater and one go outside of
Out.
the water, if you just give me that little drop of information why I need to keep that way,
Yeah.
it will make more sense. And I
Yeah.
think maybe even with kids, people treat kids like they were stupid or something.
Yep.
Kids are actually quite smart.
Oh,
And
they're
if you
brilliant.
tell them why they're doing something, I think they will get it. And they'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, so you say, for example, you try to breathe out water with blow the bubbles with your nose.
Yeah.
And why? Not just like do it,
Yeah.
do what I said.
Yeah.
So no,
Yeah.
if you
Absolutely.
say, look, if you breathe out through your nose, the water will not go to your
Well,
nose and you will not feel that terrible sensation.
yeah.
Makes sense. Now
Yeah.
the kid knows why they need to do it.
Yeah.
And they can
Absolutely.
it meets their goal of not feeling that sensation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And if they do, it's not because they've done it wrong.
yes,
It's because unfortunately they haven't been explained what that you need to do that and the reasoning behind it, because some really struggle
yeah,
from the water going up their nose
yeah,
because they haven't learned to do both, breathe out from mouth and nose, or they've been asked to just hold it.
yes.
um
About that
yeah.
also, I've noticed with the water going up the nose, how bad it is.
Mm,
I think many people don't realize how bad it is. Okay,
mm,
I noticed. So I learned to really, really enjoy water, and every time I would go to the swimming pool, I had a great time. Okay, great time by myself. Learning. I could be halfway in my learning or my practice, and I would do very, very well. I had so much good time. And then for some reason accidentally get water in my nose, it will ruin my
ruin.
day. And I was like, I want to go home. I want to go home,
Yeah.
like right now.
Right.
So that is that bad, you
Mm,
know?
yeah.
And I can see how those kids are really suffering if the water goes through their nose.
Nose, yeah, because it burns, doesn't it?
Yes, yes,
Yeah, really burns, and then it goes up, then doesn't it, up your
yeah.
sinus and then into your forehead, into your
Yeah,
head, doesn't it?
and maybe I think some people maybe just treat it as nothing,
Mm.
like, oh, it's just like do a little
Just
bit
get
of
on with it.
coughing, just get over.
Yeah,
Like you need to like understand how uncomfortable this is for
it
this kid.
really
They're
is.
fighting, literally fighting against this
Yeah,
because they're trying to do something that's really hard for
yeah,
them. And people just like dismiss it because if you
mm,
think about that, a swimming teacher is a former athlete, for
yeah,
example. For them, is nothing.
mm,
They're like they just don't see it as a big of a challenge. They're
right.
just like
Just get over it.
many of them might not have developed any empathy.
No,
And yeah, they're just literally just their attitude is just get over this.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
nothing.
yeah,
But that kid is really fighting. This
yeah.
is a fight, a
Oh,
battle.
yeah, yeah. And it could actually happen as well when you're mid flow of doing your
Hmm.
stroke and you can't put your feet down, or or you're not close to the wall because you're in the lane over
Yeah,
from the wall, and then you've got the teacher that's shouting at you to say, come on, get on with it, keep
yeah,
going, because the person behind you, or you're
yeah,
in the way of everybody, but at the same time you're trying to deal with what's happened, as well as stopping yourself from going down and
yeah,
under the water, which is then that maybe something then clicks to say, oh no, I'm sinking.
yeah,
And these are all young children, aren't they? It's
yeah,
not that they're strong enough to, or even to take that pain until they get to the end and
yeah.
then deal with it. It's that immediate thing
Yeah,
there, isn't it?
and then imagine your parent. A week passes, and your parent says, "We are going to the swimming pool
Yeah,
today. It's your swimming class." And the child is like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna
well,
have to go through this again."
yeah.
And
And they might think that what happens if it does happen again, all that is then going
yeah,
to be your
and people are,
thinking.
and people are surprised that there is a dropout, a
Yeah.
huge dropout
Mm,
rate. If the kids are uncomfortable, they've been pushed really, really hard.
yeah.
Because they rush through. Like I know people, they're being rushed through,
Yeah. Very much.
and they're not really receiving the amount of nurturing and empathy.
Yeah.
I think they are just like, I don't want to come back to that swimming pool. That's
No,
it.
yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
and
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 then you're
and,
going to
and
have that
parents, they
battle.
pay for it. They, they
Mm,
they pay for the child
yeah.
to suffer through it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Absolutely. And the parents sort of, will be saying, I have paid for this. I've signed you up for it. You've got to persevere.
Yeah.
We've got to keep going, and I'm not going to lose my, there. I mean, I can understand from the parent point of view that if
Yeah.
they don't understand either, then they just see
Yeah.
it as a
And why
different.
can't you just learn?
Yeah,
What's so hard about this? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
exactly. And what happens, unfortunately, as well, is that oh, your friend's doing really well, or the other swimmers are doing
There must be
exceptionally well.
something
Why
wrong with
aren't
me.
you?
Yeah, there must be
Yeah,
something wrong with me.
yeah.
And that's when we develop a like shame,
Mm,
feeling of inferiority that can then last for many years. Okay.
yeah,
And
yeah,
there's something else I wanted to tell you about.
yeah.
So a lot of boys, I don't know if this happens with girls. I'm just speaking from a perspective of
Sure.
a boy. Okay.
Yeah,
A lot of boys do not want to, comes back to this masculinity
yeah.
thing. They do not want to show their weakness of not being able to swim. Okay. So
Right.
they do not speak about this. They don't tell anybody of their friends. They just like kind of
Mm,
shove it to the side. Okay. And what happens is they might go to a swimming class, but they might not to.
yep.
But they end up being around the water or in the water with their friends. And suddenly everybody's swimming apart from them, and they
Yep.
have a choice of being smart and staying out like within their depth,
Yep.
or just try because they feel brave or they think they can overcome this. They try
Yep.
to be strong and they drown because they
Mm,
were afraid to admit to the weakness that they cannot
right.
swim. This happens all the way to
Interesting.
teenagers. Okay. This happens so often that basically because water, I found this out I kind of like on my own maxim that the water is truth. Okay, water is truth. What water will strip you out of your
Mm,
posing, like you're no longer
yep.
able to pose how cool you are.
Yep.
If you go into the water and you cannot swim, you will die.
Yep.
Okay, you
Yep.
cannot pose your way in the water.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Okay,
can't get out of it. Yep.
yeah, so the problem
Interesting.
so think about that. So you
Yeah.
have a group of young men or
Yep.
young adolescents or boys, and they're like, haha, let's go, and everybody goes, and there's this one kid.
Mm, mm,
He's like, I want to be there, but I cannot swim. What should I do? A smart
yeah.
one will stay on the shore,
Sure.
and the one that is not so smart will try and attempt
Yeah.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
badly. Maybe he will survive, or maybe he'll drown. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Well, the drowning statistics do show that it's males are higher,
Yeah,
and in
adolescence.
adolescence.
Yeah, yeah. That because
There's
I think
that.
that's what happened. They go on a lake, they go on
Yeah.
into the sea, and they do not want to admit in front of their other peers that they
Friends.
cannot swim. Okay.
Wow, that is really interesting. And wow, I mean, that's just really hit the nail on the head there, really, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, then so girls essentially, then if we look at it that way, they'll be more happy to say to their friends, look, I don't feel comfortable doing this, so I'm just going to stay. And the girls maybe are a little bit more accepting. But then you don't know, though, as a boy, if you did say that to your mates, would they accept the fact
No,
that,
they will
or
make
would
fun
they?
of him.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
They'll be
yeah.
like, "Shall
So
we bring you the little thingies so you
yeah,
can then, or a little ring around you, ha
yeah,
ha ha ha,
right,
and an oxygen bottle, ha 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 ha."
right.
You know what I mean?
Wow. So they
Because
really
it's
do.
brutal. It's brutal out there for
Yeah.
boys. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is amazing insight. And I, if we could, because I remember our conversation before, which again I'd love to talk about, is that when you were then feeling comfortable going to the pool yourself, and you said that you're exploring by yourself, and
Mhm.
because of your other experience with the other lady, what you were saying is that you spent a lot of time just doing loads of different types of moves in the water.
Yes.
Can you tell me why you wanted to do that rather than taking a kickboard and things like that? What made
Okay.
you? Yeah.
So I became really much against the kickboard along the way. Okay. And I've noticed so before I got into the water, my approach was I had to really ease myself in.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the first few times, I spent a lot of time sitting. It was Nuffield, and they had this sauna, and right next to the sauna and the swimming
Right.
pool, they had these little chairs, the wooden
Right.
chairs.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
was sitting at these chairs and observing what people are doing in a swimming pool. And
Right.
often there was a class of somebody teaching kids. Okay.
Okay.
And I observed what the teachers are doing.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the go-to exercises was to get that kickboard in front and make them swim the whole length. And I thought about it, and I was just like, and is this idea of getting through the whole swimming pool with just kicking, is that a smart idea? Is it a smart thing to
Right.
learn? Like, what does it give them? They give them a strong kick. It gives them
Right.
strong legs. Does it mean that can I not swim well without having strong legs? And I'm like,
Right.
no, I think you can absolutely swim fine if your legs are not strong. Okay.
Right.
I then watched some YouTube tutorials, and in the tutorials, I learned about the two-beat kick. And also, some of them, they were saying that actually legs are only for stability, not for propulsion.
Right.
And so you could totally swim without the
Mm.
legs. And then what I did was when I was practicing my front crawl, I took a pool boy, put
Yep.
it between my legs,
Yep.
so I don't kick at all, and I
Hmm.
use only my arms.
Yep.
And I thought, well, wait a minute, I'm actually faster. I'm way less tired,
Yep.
and I it turned out I didn't have to do any of that kickboard kicking. And
Yeah.
the fact is, not only it's really tiring,
Yeah.
okay, to kick through, it's slow.
Constantly. Yeah.
It's really slow to get. So basically, I have an hour, for example, I was practicing in the pool, but out of this 1 hour, if I decided to do kickboard thingies, it would
Yeah.
take forever to get to the other side. And I'm like, I'm just wasting my time. I'm losing
Energy.
time
Energy.
and energy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stop kicking altogether, or like
Yeah.
at least do the very gentle
Oh yeah.
kicks, you know?
Just yeah.
And I learned to swim. And I also observed some older people, and I saw some people, some old people who were not kicking at all. And they were just
Right.
doing their breaststroke without kicking.
Right.
Their technique was not perfect, but I was like, they're still swimming.
Moving. Yeah.
They're moving. They're
Yeah.
fine.
Getting
So
across. Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, I'm going to reduce the amount of energy I waste on my kick, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna just gently balance it. It took away the sense of exhaustion.
Right.
It gave me ability to swim for further distance. I was also way more relaxed.
Mm.
It gave me this kind of like really smooth, you know, like they have these videos on TikTok and Instagram where the smooth swimmers do
Yeah.
their
Just glide through.
they play some Enya and then they
Yeah.
glide through. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
literally what I started to swim like, and it
Right.
started becoming so enjoyable. I
Mhm.
was literally like comparing this to meditation at some point. I was
Mm.
just like, oh, I'm starting to meditate. I no longer think about getting to the end of the swimming pool as fast as I can. I just enjoy my swim. Okay.
Wow.
And that really helped. So that was like my thing that I discovered. And then I started thinking, okay, can I do other things? And I just thought, by the way, I don't know, do you watch YouTube videos at all, like tutorials and what's out there?
Um, Occasionally, I mean, if I'm being honest, it's not really no, because I know what to do. But
Okay.
but when you're saying about the TikTok videos that do pop up of them gliding, and that's what I teach really, to be honest, with adults, is to focus more on the arm pull than the leg kicks. The leg kick just tends to just be behind you, like you're saying, for the balance. But it is interesting watching what they do say as to but with regards to the understanding of why they're doing it that way, then I don't watch that, if that makes sense, because I'm not searching for those questions.
Well, I've watched several hours. I mean, we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of hours of the YouTube tutorials, okay? And there's some great insights and great teaching, okay?
Right.
And a lot of them will give you some really scientific explanations for things, why you should do things. For example, that if you cup, of course, if you cup your hand like this, it helps you to propel yourself. But apparently, if you have slight gaps between your fingers, about this much, okay, you're actually gonna have more grip, because apparently, according to physics, between those fingers, like between fingers, there's a small pocket of like there's like almost a glove created
Yeah,
by the
creation.
by
Wow.
the water. So
Yeah.
you actually you can pull. You cannot have them wide,
No.
but if you have
It's
like
a
about
distance.
this much, you can actually have a stronger pull.
Oh,
And there's like a lot of interesting things. So I started just to experiment. It was like, what can I do? Can I just spread
yeah.
them wide open? Can I swim with just one arm? Can I swim with no kick? Can I swim without, for example, any arms? And I'll just
Yeah.
put them behind my back and see if I can do anything just to pop out, get some air, and go back
Back
down.
down.
Yeah, and just
Love it.
having fun. And then I wanted to learn a flip turn. Sorry, and I practiced my flip turns, and I was standing in the water up to here,
Yep.
and trying to see if I can, do my turn in the standing position. I was swallowed a lot of water. I got a lot of water in my nose. That's how I learned that I have to
Go out.
blow out through my nose along the way as I'm
Mm.
turning my body.
Yeah.
But some people have a different technique to do that.
Yeah.
And that's how I practiced. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love that, because really in swimming lessons they don't have that time or the want. They just want them to, right, I've got 30 minutes, get them in, get them out, then the next group, and I've
Yeah.
got this list. And I'm not saying all teachers, I mean there is a whole array, and I'm not saying those that are watching this are doing this, but generally is that you have your plan in your head, and you go through each sort of skill set or the core skill that you're working on, and then right, next group in, and we're going to be doing the same depending on the level and stage that they're in. But I don't know, and I'd love to hear from somebody that does do this, is to give them that time of where literally potentially nothing is planned, and you do the whole time of where exactly what you're saying. Or it could be that, right, yesterday, let's work on turns today, but I'm just going to let you test it out yourselves and see, how do you think that you turn? Because like exactly what you're saying is, if someone else is learning to do it different way, doesn't mean to say it's the same for the next person. There's not necessarily one way fits all.
Yes.
And they may breathe out at different times, and may hold it, then breathe out, or breathe out and hold it, or whatever it is for them to do that. And I think there's very few and far between that I can imagine that people will, because the expectation as well also from the parents, if they see that teacher's just not doing what they see as being teaching a lesson, then how can that teacher then also have that confidence to say, well, actually we're exploring today?
Exactly. Yeah, you need a bit of assertivity.
Yeah.
So as a teacher, probably many of them are young, coming out of the
In a uni.
uni, and they just got qualified,
Yeah.
and they might have the skill
Yeah.
to teach,
If they've been, yeah.
but in terms of as a person, they might still need to develop the character to be able to hold their own in front of the parent.
Yeah.
And also explain and communicate what you're doing, and understand that the parent can be wrong. So how can you say that without being combative and offending them?
Right.
So I started thinking of this as, apart from being a teacher or swimming instructor, you have to be an educator. Okay, you educate people, and as you educate your kids, but you also educate the parent and be like, by the way, for example, the kids, let's say there's a parent and a kid, and the parent is not happy about something. So you would have to tell the parents, listen, I believe you want to have your children safe when you're going somewhere on holidays or whatever. You want them safe. You want them to give them as much as confidence and ability to save themselves if they were in trouble. And in order to do that, they need a variety of skills and experiences. And some of them may be taking longer than usual. They might be scared of something. But my job is to give them that. And you need to show the parent that you care.
Yeah.
And again, without slugging off some people, there are people who come out as teachers, being qualified, they don't really care,
No.
because they just want to make money as like in
Motion.
any other job, and they just
Yeah.
go through the motions
Yeah.
of what they're supposed to do, but
Yeah.
they don't really care, too much.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
again, it's not everyone. There's
No.
plenty of great teachers in every field,
Yeah.
but yeah, there will be people who are going through the motions and they don't really care about the parents or the kids.
Yeah.
you know?
No, it's a shame, really, because it's an important job that we have.
Yes.
And I don't think swimming teachers get enough credit.
Yes, but it's also really hard because it's a complex scenario.
Yeah.
Because there's the child,
Yeah.
then there's the parent.
Yeah.
You need to achieve a specific result.
Yeah.
And from each angle you have some hurdles to overcome. So it's just like you might have not enough time, but then you have some situations that happen in the family of that child that causes that child to maybe have a problem with something, because the parents, maybe you have at work some problems that you don't get enough of something from your workplace, and then you have to put all that together, and despite all those challenges, teach as many children as possible to as best standard as possible, I guess.
Yeah, and also a lot of the leisure centres, they have so many children in one group, and you've got all of that's been having to be dealt with. I call it the circle of success, because you've got you as the teacher, the child, the adult, which is, I think, the missing piece. But then you're adding them into water. So although that you've got potentially these issues on land, you're now adding the water effect to it. But to finish up and conclude this, is there, knowing from your experience and then from what now you're doing, which is an amazing thing that you are doing, what advice would you give somebody from your experience of that traumatic experience, now being a teacher? What would you say? I mean, they are qualified. Everyone, that is watching this, and others as well, are qualified. So they've gone through, like, you've done your qualifications, but real life now, what would you advise a teacher if they're looking, if they are coming across some sort of hurdles?
I would advise someone to seek to understand why. Why something takes longer, why something doesn't work, why this parent wants something. Like, there needs to be communication between the parents and the teacher, and the child and the teacher, and bring them together. And so I would encourage as much conversation and real desire to understand each other, understand what's going on behind the scenes of the person they are trying to teach, really.
And I guess, do you think as well is that it's better to take longer with the child than to rush through the experience to then potentially have the negative and then not come back?
So I'm still trying to, because I'm new to this industry, I'm start trying to figure out, because I understand the huge numbers of children that need this. Okay, so because the numbers are so large, that's why there's a need for fast and quick turnarounds and getting everybody in bigger groups. And so you obviously, when you're in a group setting, you're gonna spend less time with individual children, so the quality drops also, and some people are left behind. But you cannot really slow down completely, because if you do, you're just not going to be able to get through the numbers of people who need this. So I'm still exploring, and like I think conversations like this will help
Mm.
us.
Yeah,
One of the conclusions, I guess, that so far I've got is that apart from sending children to the classes,
yeah,
I think parents should take responsibility
yeah.
and start teaching their own children on their own.
Oh, as
I
well.
think this is one of the number one thing that can happen, so we can increase the or decrease the number of drownings and
Yeah,
have increased number of children knowing how to swim, is
yeah,
simply if their own parents teach them.
yeah.
Okay, and they take like this their own responsibility in their own hands. And I know somebody say, oh, therefore we'll be making less money as swimming teachers because we're literally getting ourselves out of business,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, because we're going to ask somebody else. We will outsource
Take
the teaching
my
to the
role.
parents.
Mm,
But I think if you think about that, it's like, no, not really, because the numbers are so big that you
mm.
need that. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get through. There's a shortage of swimming
Yeah,
teachers,
yeah, yeah.
actually.
There is hugely. Yeah,
So
especially due to COVID.
yes,
Mm,
so parents need to start teaching their own kids and
yeah,
really take this seriously. And maybe second thing would be maybe bring in more swimming teachers from other areas that we were not considering. For
interesting.
example, because up to this point, I think it was only former competitive swimmers were the teachers.
Yeah,
And I believe STA introduced this STA award in
right,
order to bring people from non-competitive swimming
right.
backgrounds, because well, you don't need to be a competitive swimmer to
No, no,
teach,
no, no, no.
especially the very early stages.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's
Okay.
more child development that's needed to
Yes.
understand the child themselves, how to
Yes.
learn.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I think there might be a lot of people who never considered becoming a swimming teacher,
Mm,
but they could be simply because they are good at listening
yeah,
and being with kids,
yeah,
and they would be able to take the time and teach the child
yeah,
with their pace.
yeah.
Um, you know, that's
No, I
kind of
love
how I
that.
see it.
No,
Okay.
that's exactly it. No. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. I think that, like you said, just having these and more of these is, and especially if they are new swimming teachers like yourself, it's all a learning curve, and to get as much information as possible and researching, and that's why I've set up the swim education page and the membership, is to have these conversations. And you don't necessarily have to sit and watch us. You could put this on as a podcast and listen to it in the car or when you're on a walk or something, to be able to listen to what we're saying, and also to listen to other podcasts or watch videos like you're saying. Where
Mhm.
can people find you on your YouTube channel, Alan?
So the YouTube channel is called at Befriend Water.
Okay, I'll put it in the, yeah, I'll
And
add a link.
I've recently created a couple other social media. There's just starting on Instagram and TikTok. The same at Befriend Water. Trying to make water my friend.
Yeah,
Basically,
love it.
this is the motto. There's one more thing I wanted to maybe mention if we have a
Yeah,
chance.
yeah,
So anybody who listens to this is a swimming teacher or aspiring swimming teacher, would to do something together. I would be very happy to do something together, including you, Helen.
yeah.
One of the things that's on my mind is some sort of a workshop, education, water safety for
Mhm.
parents.
Yeah,
Basically something that we would bring on, that could be online or could be in person, where we bring on parents and we talk about the things that maybe they do not know about the fact that if they send the kid out to the swimming class, that they are
yeah,
not guaranteed that the kid will be safe in the water when they go on holidays, and what to look out for, um, how to spot those early things, and how to maybe
yeah,
talk to their kids, and maybe organize something. I've got
yeah,
thousands of ideas. Okay, I've got
yeah,
so I don't
yeah,
want to now spill everything here
yeah,
and like
sure.
go through another hour, but there's definitely things that
Mhm.
could be done in terms of educating parents. I think we
Absolutely.
need to work with parents more. I
Yeah,
think
I do.
as teachers, I think we need to work with parents more,
Yeah,
and then see what happens.
yeah. No, yeah, it needs to happen. I think, and there's a lot of parents just and not to obviously do too much, because we can always talk about this as to help with that connection of parents to for teachers, but they either feel as though they don't have the skills to do it themselves, or they just want to pass on to you as a teacher to say, you know,
Yes.
drown proof my child. So you tend to have those two sort of thought processes, but you can overcome that by, like you're saying, it's this education, and it doesn't happen early enough. It's almost sometimes too late in the game. It's never too late in that sense, but the earlier the better. And even when they're a child, a baby, a very young baby, the education needs to start just like it does with anything else when you've just had a baby, because they are going to go and take them to the pool. It's a given. It happens because we've all taken on baby lessons. So
well, listen,
I would love to do that, and I know that would be some others on here that would be interested in that too, for sure.
And you know, I'm getting married this year, and I'm planning to have a baby as soon as I can. So I took it upon myself. I'm like, I'm gonna make sure my kids can swim, and I can talk to other parents about like my journey, and then obviously use that as a platform to build, you know, on top of that. So we'll see. But anytime anybody has a question, reach out. I'm happy to chat. We can do collaborations for YouTube or other places, or meet in person. I'm in UK, Scotland, but you know, there's going to be some traveling happening as well. I know you do, so we'll see how things go. Appreciate you having me. I really think this is just the first kind of one of the first steps, but this can go quite far.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you not letting your traumatic experience stop you from not and then what you're doing now. I think you're doing an amazing thing, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan. Take care.
Take care. Bye, Helen. Have a great day.